I didn't fire my rifle in Afghanistan. And then as soon as I went to Iraq, I went to Ramadi, and it was gunfights every single day.
Yeah.
And I arrived at the conclusion, I'm definitely getting killed in Ramadi, Iraq. This is going to be my last deployment. And I rotated in and out of there like 4 or 5 times.
Well, awesome to have you on, bro. It's actually very long overdue.
I appreciate you having me. I really enjoy this, man. Yeah. Traveling and podcasting has been something I've really enjoyed the last couple of years. And it's just cool going and meeting new people and building the network. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we first met, I can't remember one of us. I think when your viral video came out, I sent you a message, and you probably got thousands of messages.
It's a crazy time.
But you responded back to mine. So, and we just kind of connected there. And then over the years, we have lots of mutual friends over the years. And so it's long overdue to for us to get together in person. And I know after the show, we're going to go do some shooting and jiu-jitsu.
That's right.
And just have some fun. So we have a lot of things in common, but some of the things we have in common is our background. Both come out of special operations community. You were Army Ranger, did a lot of post-military stuff, deployments overseas and in the contracting world. And then both of us with law enforcement. I think everyone here, we're all 3 black belts. We all served in law enforcement. So, right. You and I were both in the military, but in your life now, I think there's a lot of parallels with our lives now. We're both still jiu-jitsu, and both are, big advocates for resiliency and people's mindsets. And we all wearing your shirt right now.
No one's coming to save you,
right? I mean, I actually I already had this shirt. I got it from Mike Glover before. So this is my second one, but I love this shirt. I love what it says. No one is coming to save you. I mean, you have to be you're your first. Yeah. You're your own first responder. You're responsible for yourself and your family.
That's what. Yeah. So Glover told me, he goes, man, our motto is you're your own first responder, but it doesn't look as cool on a shirt. So I want to collab with you with your shirt. Yeah. So that's how me and Fieldcraft got together on that. Yeah. But it's the truth, and it's not a doomsday thing. It's empowering. It's the opposite of that. It's like, take the time to be a capable person and be able to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And like, I look at, we were all law enforcement, and this isn't a jab at law enforcement, but if my family was going through any type of crisis, I would vote on myself over anyone that's going to be on the other end of that 911 call. And every man should aspire to be that.
Yeah.
And if cops show up and they're able to save your family and do the things that we expect them to be able to do as first responders, that's great, right? But that doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
And I live in Seattle. The 45-minute response time on some calls. Right. And it's like 45 minutes is just a BDA.
That's the reality that people need to understand is like they feel that peace of mind through a 911 call, but like stop and pause and think of the reality of that. 911 doesn't mean someone's immediately there. It's going to be a long time. And then, like you said, who's going to show up? I'm with you, man. Not a disrespect to anybody in the law enforcement community, but I am 1000% confident that I'm going to be able to protect my family and myself better than any police officer that shows up.
I've had plenty of coworkers. I have a couple incidents that stick out in my mind that just always seem silly to me, but we got a call to respond. I don't even remember what the call was, but between where me and my partner were standing and where we were supposed to go was a 6-foot chain link fence. Just hopped over it and started walking. He's like, wait, where's a gate? Does somebody have a key? I'm like, you're a police officer and you're concerned about getting over a 6-foot fence. Like we're not the same. And a lot of people in the profession, in my experience, are there for the wrong reasons. And that may be the people that get dispatched to save your family. And that's something that you need to think about.
We'll get off the entrance to the show real quick. But if you're a police officer out there and you put a badge on, and at some point you raise your hand, you made a commitment, took an oath to protect the people in your community. Like, how could you not take that seriously? How could you not train with your firearm more than once a year? How could you not do something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? How could you not put some running shoes on and run and be able to make it past the end of the block?
If you are a police officer that doesn't do Jiu-Jitsu, you are simply saying, I don't take my job serious at all. Even compliant cuffing, there's an element of grappling to that.
Yeah.
We're manipulating joints. We're moving people. We're moving bodies. And if you've decided to join the profession of putting human beings in handcuffs, then you need to know how to control human beings. And I mean, we could do the whole show on that.
Yeah,
man.
and if you're going to say that, well, I have a gun, that's the wrong answer.
Yeah, of
wrong
course.
answer. Back in the day, like, I mean, well, not back in the day, even not like, you know, why do you have all these, you know, incidents of you know, excessive use of force? Because usually it's the police officer didn't have control. I mean, there's obviously a different scenario, but a lot of times the police officer didn't have control because he couldn't defend himself.
I think
and
it's
he escalated.
Yeah, it comes down to an over reliance on your tools.
Yeah,
people think like I don't need jiu-jitsu because I have a taser, and then one of the prongs goes in a belt. They don't get NMI. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was the opposite. I was in law enforcement for 10 years and I tased 0 people. My less than lethal was jiu-jitsu, right? Yeah. And the crazy thing is like, I'm out of the profession now, and I don't have a front row seat to how crazy it is. But there's a lot of agencies that you can't do a rear naked choke anymore, and it's like,
there's a policy at my department called the Canard policy, because I was fighting with a guy and he tried to take my gun, and I put him in a rear naked choke and choked him out, and I got scolded for it when I could have killed him because he tried to take my gun.
No, I have legal authority to smash his head in with a brick.
Yeah.
But I'm going to choose
or my mag light that I carry around, right? Like that's somehow acceptable. But that's the problem, is there's a responsibility tied to being a police officer, right? There's a responsibility to yourself, there's a responsibility to your family, and there's a responsibility to the people that you serve with to be equipped to do the job. And people won't do the hard work to equip themselves. And so then, right? And I know we're on this tangent, but let's just keep going.
I love
tangents. So now we take this shooting, right? And this the way the nation views police officer involved shootings. All three of us in this room, and I say it to the camera, the vast majority of the shootings are 100% justified shootings, right? No matter what the media tells you, you know, and we've seen that play out at this point, right? Yep. We've seen the videos come out after the fact where it looked like it wasn't justified, but the guy actually had a weapon. But let's take those scenarios that are actually justified shooting, and then let's equip that officer with, at minimum, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I promise that number of lethal force drastically decreases.
100%. That's the one thing that people fail to realize, is that if I have good jiu-jitsu, it's safer for my adversaries.
It is.
It's not more dangerous. It's safer.
Yeah.
And a blue belt should be a mandatory achievement for a police officer.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum. Should be a mandatory achievement.
It could be close to achieved in the
academy,
in the time of the academy. It could be close. I mean, we probably couldn't get there, but you could get close if they did jiu-jitsu every day.
Yeah.
If it was part of their PT, you know, let's say even 3 days a week, if it was part of their PT that they did jiu-jitsu every single day. I mean, 6 months is way too fast to get a blue belt, but we could get them close if they're doing jiu-jitsu a lot.
You could certainly get them on the path.
We could.
And really make some massive advancements in 6 months.
Well, especially because you're doing it for specific training too. I mean,
inverted de la Riva.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're going specific, like, so you can really get someone very competent in that period of time.
You know what though? Like at the end of the day, because a lot of times people talk about the academy, or they'll talk about like, oh, my department won't pay for me, or everybody comes up with 100 excuses. Mm-hmm. Even like, I think we did like 2 DT sessions a year, something like that.
Yeah.
And I would always say to the guys, you know, because they start complaining right away. I don't know if you guys experience that. Yeah. You know, hey, let's shrimp up and down the mats. I don't know what sliding on my butt has to do with fighting. Well, it's creating angles, and angles is literally everything in fighting.
Yeah.
You know, so you're complaining about something that you're absolutely ignorant on. But let me give you guys a little example on the importance of training. I was like, who knows who Conor McGregor is? And everyone's like, oh, sure, yeah, of course, you know. And I said, Conor McGregor has an upcoming title fight against whoever, because this was years ago. So do you think, is there anyone in the room that thinks leading into this fight, he said, I'm going to train 2 times.
In a year.
Yeah. 2 training sessions in a year leading into his fight. And everyone thinks that's silly. Like, oh, of course not, you know? And I said, okay, well, as a police officer, I said, Conor McGregor knows he has a fight coming up. So he's training relentlessly every day, day in, day out, day in and day out. You guys have fights coming up too. We all know it. Patrol leads to fights. It's not if, it's when. Every single cop knows patrol leads to fights. But here's the deal. Conor McGregor's fights are sanctioned. They have a rule set. And if it gets too bad, he can quit.
Yeah.
And if he's too dumb to quit, someone steps in and saves him.
Right.
Well, guess what? No one's coming to save you.
That's right.
Right. And so, you know, you're going to get in a fight.
It's on a shirt.
That's right. It's on a shirt. You know you're going to get in physical altercations with people that have ill intentions for you. You know that. And you know that the solution to that is understanding how to protect yourself. And people still, for some reason, talk themselves out of it. I can't wrap my head around it.
No.
So the mandatory training, the whole department has to do that. And a lot of people are complaining the whole time. So me and a couple other guys would be like, hey, on Tuesdays, me or Barros or Muse, there's a handful of black belts at my department are going to be on the mat room, putting on training for anyone that wants to attend. Guess who attends? Usually the black belts, there's a couple blue belts and a purple belt.
Already
and
jiu-jitsu
it's like,
guys.
they're already the guys that train.
Yeah.
It's cool training with those guys, but they're not the guys that need it. The people that need it are averse to it. And I don't understand why. Part of me,
my answer to all of them is go do something else.
Go sell, like Greg Lappin always says, go sell car insurance.
Yeah, go do something else, man. Because not only are you putting your own life in danger, you're putting the lives of everybody that counts on you in danger, including me and my family as a citizen.
And you can make more money, at least in Washington State, delivering for UPS than being a police officer.
Yeah.
So like,
and have less responsibility, and, less drama in your life. Like, what are you doing?
Don't get me wrong.
It's a stressful drama.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There was time when I was like, I think I just want to sling packages from Amazon.
Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's crazy is too, like there could be some guys, and maybe not, hopefully not, hopefully our audience is on board with us, but there could be some guys watching this like, man, I could take care of myself. And one thing, this was really cool. We did this at a department, and if we get any chiefs listen to this show, I would I would really, really encourage you to do this as we did. Now you have to have somebody that's equipped to do this, but we did like a red man. I'm sure you guys similar to red man, but not a red man. We did like a straight up fight. And I would, I've been training for a long time, professional fighter, so, and that's not because I'm bad. I'm like you. There's plenty of way better people in the world than me. But it was
although
always.
Sean's never lost a round.
I'm not lost around. I'll take that.
Him and Khabib, and he's not that bad.
Yeah. So, but I say this to say this again, not to boast for myself, but just as this like create the reality of this. I have fought 22 men and women in a row. That's the largest academy we've ever done. 22 in a row, and at any point in those fights, I could have taken their life.
Yeah.
And so I get to sit back after that and talk to them and say, hey, look, 22 of you just lined up and I just fought you in a row. And at any point, there's not one of you that could have stopped me from killing you. And you could see there was like a click, but unless you put these people in this type of situation, I don't know if we're ever going to get a change. I don't know if we're ever going to get a course correction in our culture of law enforcement unless we make them fight.
So they called it in Washington State, the police academy, they called it Fight for Life. And similarly to you, I used to go down to the academy. And what it was is you walk into this, it's a bar scenario where a guy is getting basically thrown out of a bar, right? Mm. And you're there to criminally trespass him. Not a big call, but little calls turn into big things very quickly, right? And so you go in there, you tell the guy, hey, you need to leave. I'm not going anywhere. And then it turns into a fight. And so I got in these fights and I'm not, just like you said, I could have killed him. No. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to train you, but really use it as an opportunity to educate you. And a lot of those kids had never been in a fight before.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what it felt like. And I've had them come up to me afterwards and be like, dude, I've never been in a fight before. I didn't know what that felt like. And I told them, I said, you know what? That wasn't a fight either.
Yeah.
That was a training. That was a training scenario. It felt like a fight. Which is good, right? I'm not saying that's not good, but just know it can get a lot worse than that.
Personally, I don't believe you should wear a badge unless you've been punched in the face before. I mean, because the first time you ever get punched in the face should not be while you're on duty.
But see, I think a lot
shouldn't be like part of the process. Like, here's a badge,
punch. That's why they do the red man type thing. Is because of that reason. Like, hey, let's put them. So I know I wasn't trying to bash my department earlier with the choke thing, but to give them credit too, they did support this because people get hurt during this process, and they still supported this year after year.
Which you have to do that. You have to. But in Washington, they got rid of that because it's just too dangerous. Too many recruits are getting hurt, and it's like, man, so we're just going to nerf all the edges because someone might get hurt and diminish the overall capability of our state's police force.
Yeah,
it's asinine to me, man. And
more people get hurt in the long run.
And one thing that you'll see, and I was guilty of this. Men particularly, we think we're a lot tougher than we are.
Yeah.
And growing up, I had 3 years of wrestling and a couple years of boxing as like 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. So I thought I was like pretty much invincible. And the whole time I was in the Ranger Regiment, like we'd go get drunk and beat up UW students. And like, I didn't think I needed training.
Yeah.
And then I was deployed to Ramadi, Iraq, and there was a SEAL that was there. And he's like, hey man, you want to train with me tonight? I said, yeah, what do you do? He goes, I'm a Muay Thai boxer and a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu. And to me, that just felt like he said karate to me.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what I mean?
exactly what he just
I was
said.
like, dude, I wrestled for 3 years and I boxed and I was 225 at the time. I was big. And this dude was 170, but like a GSP 170, a SEAL super athlete, right?
Yeah.
I've never been beaten like that. Like the leg kicks alone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think getting kicked in the leg's worse than getting punched in the face.
For sure. I mean, shin bone on femur.
Yeah.
bone.
Can be.
And that night I had like, that was the life-changing moment when I was like, there's men that can do that to me. What is happening right now?
Yeah.
And I went to him, his name was Dallas. I said, Dallas, I want to train with you every single day the rest of this deployment. And he's like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then I went home and I found an MMA gym and a jiu-jitsu academy. And I was young and single, so I was training 5, 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, the process becomes fun. It's not a process that's scary. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's painful and it's hard.
Sure.
But I tell my new students all the time, commit to 90 days. Because I think the 90-day window is where like
Stop sucking so bad.
it stops sucking so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been doing it for 20-something years now. It still sucks sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the process becomes clear and you start to have an acceptance.
Yeah.
And the suck to fun ratio starts to balance out.
Yeah.
And then you fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Well,
You know.
yeah, I think everybody has this reaction when they get introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's and I use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. It's you're going to get embarrassed, right? So like the reaction is either like, I never want anything to do with that again, or I have to learn that. Like,
Luckily for me,
Yeah.
and probably you guys too, I started training consistently in 2004. There wasn't females in the game yet.
yeah,
So I didn't go through that white belt phase, just getting mauled by women purple belt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But now, like, dude, one of
Now
the
there's women that toss you
Bro,
up now.
yeah.
Bro.
one of the toughest guys in my academy is one of my brown belts, one of my coaches, one of my favorite people in the world. His name's Tyler. Day one, he was at the gym and his kids were attending kids class. And one of my coach said, dude, you look like a strong, good athlete. You want to try training? And in his brain, he thought this is nerdy karate stuff.
yeah,
And he goes, yeah, I'll give this a try tonight. And one of my female purple belts got on top of him, held him down and choked him. And he couldn't do anything.
yeah,
And he told me, he told me a couple months later, he goes, on that drive home, he goes, I'm not joking. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not being silly. On that drive home, I 100% expected Vanessa, his wife, to ask me for a divorce.
yeah.
Because I'm this tough, I'm the leader of the family.
Yeah.
I'm the protector. I'm this tough guy. I'm jacked. I have tattoos on my neck. And she watched an overweight female get on top of me and do whatever she wanted to
Couldn't
me.
do anything about it.
Yeah.
Haunting, dude.
Yeah.
Haunting.
Yeah.
Bro.
And so he's been at the gym every day since. It's been 8 years now.
The
or something.
takeaway, do jujitsu.
Do
That's
jujitsu.
the take.
Yeah, do
For
jujitsu.
fear of us talking about this for the next 45 minutes, bro.
Well, let me say one last thing
All
about
right,
jiu-jitsu.
you got it.
In the words of my professor, Joao Assis, I've yet
I
to meet.
love Joao, by the way.
Joao
He's
is one of the coolest people in the world, man. He goes, I've yet to meet the person that tried jiu-jitsu and regretted it.
Hmm.
That person doesn't exist.
Nice.
So
How'd you get here? Like, let's hear. Everybody knows. A lot of people listening probably know who you are, Greg. Like, how'd you get here? You know,
What's the
where'd you
backstory?
grow up? The backstory of getting to, going in the army and eventually law enforcement and jiu-jitsu.
I grew up in a little farm town about an hour north of Seattle called Snohomish.
Mhm.
And typical farm kid, right? We didn't live on a farm, but that was the culture, right? We were the Hicks and just went and parked in fields and drank beer and fought and just did dumb Hick stuff. And
America stuff.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But it was fun. It was good times, but I never knew what was next after high school. I hear guys like Andy Stump that wanted to be a SEAL since he was 7 or something.
Mhm.
I had no aspirations of being a soldier or a ranger. I just knew I hated school and I knew that high school was rapidly winding down. And I'm like, okay, what's next? And you have to have that conversation with yourself. And I thought, I'm not interested in going into the trades. I certainly don't want to go into school. Well, that really leaves one option, right? And so I was like, well, let's go see what recruiters have to say. And I don't know why. To this day, I don't know where I got this idea from, but I was like, if I'm going to go in the military, I should do something hard, because that's what the military does, right? They do hard stuff.
Right.
So not knowing their mission skill sets or their mission capabilities or their unit capabilities, I said, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger. That's what I'm going to be. And so I went to the Navy first. And the recruiter, for lack of a better word, was a douchebag.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, Navy guys are dorks, man.
Yeah.
17-year-old kid basing his career off of one human being.
Well, not many Navy SEAls go into recruiting.
No, that's exactly right.
Sit in the recruiting office.
And so you know how all the recruiting offices are right next to each other, right? Yeah. And they're poaching off of each other, and they're sitting waiting to see who's walking in and walking out. I walk out of the Navy office, and this guy goes, hey, why don't you sit down and talk with me for a minute? He had a Ranger tab.
Yeah.
And he seemed like the coolest guy I'd ever met, right? And he's started talking to me about being a Ranger. And he wasn't a regimental Ranger. He was, we could talk about that for the next hour too. But the Army has the Ranger Regiment as an operational unit. And then it has Ranger School, where you can go attend as a leadership course. And a lot of people in infantry MOSs go to that school. Sure. And that's how he got his Ranger tab. A lot of great, and I'm not taking away from that. There's a lot. I love all of the 82nd and the 101st and all the traditional infantry units, the Ranger Regiment's not for everybody, but regardless, I liked this guy's energy. I liked his vibe. And I was like, yes, Army guys are cool. Navy guys are dorks. I'm going in the Army. Right. And to tell you the truth, I'm glad it worked out that way. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of friends that are SEALs. I was never one of those Rangers that hate SEAls. Seems like SEAls and Rangers hate each other, but it's almost like a sibling rivalry, we'll still QRF you when you get compromised on a mountaintop and we got to go get you, because that's what SEAls do. But, it was interesting how I arrived at that decision, just kind of in your 17-year-old brain, not knowing anything. Okay, I guess I'll be a Ranger. And so I signed up, and I didn't get a RIP contract. And my recruiter told me, I'm going to give you airborne infantry. And when you're down at Fort Benning, talk to the Ranger Regiment and they'll give you a slot at RIP. Thank God that actually worked the way that he said it did, because more often than not, it doesn't.
Right.
If the RIP is ran on needs of the regiment. And it's RASP now, but when it was RIP when I went through, and they run it as they need.
Ranger Assessment Selection Program.
Ranger Assessment and Selection Phase is RASP.
Okay.
It was Ranger Indoctrination Program when I went through.
Yeah.
And the reason they changed it is because RIP was 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you got to the unit, that's when you learned all Ranger SOPs and how to actually operate. But after the War on Terror, they were getting young guys out of RIP. That RIP is just a gut test, a gut check. You're out doing log PT in the mud and the rain, and you're tough. This guy showed he's tough for 3 weeks. Now send him up to his battalion and we train him up. But when the op tempo got real busy and we were deploying all the time, you couldn't get a new private on the team that didn't know anything. So now RASP is 3 weeks of gut check, 5 weeks of skill building. Then you go to regiment and have a little understanding of regimental SOPs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a lot. It's 5 weeks, but it's at least a foundation, right?
Sure.
And so I went and I did that, and I went through airborne school, and then I went and talked to the RIP recruiter, and they just happened to have a class running, and they said, yep, you can join, and got selected and went to 2nd Ranger Battalion up at Fort Lewis, Washington. And this was in 1999. And so peacetime Army, and you were in peacetime Army, correct? Or Marine Corps?
Yeah, peacetime, yeah.
Blasphemy Army.
I went in 93.
93,
yes,
okay, yeah.
Went in, yeah.
And so here's a crazy story. I was in Ranger School on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, because you go to the regiment, and then you do a year or so there as a private, and then you get sent down to Ranger School. And
once you're probably pretty ready, because they really prepared you. Yeah.
And plus the regiment makes Ranger School a mandatory event to continue service in the regiment. If you fail Ranger School, you get kicked out of the regiment.
Sure.
And so for a lot of people that go down to Ranger School, they go attend and pass or fail, whatever, But in regiment, if you pass, your status in the regiment gets elevated. You get promoted. There's no privates anymore. You're E4 at a minimum. And, life gets exponentially better. You're not scrubbing toilets. You're not buffing the floor. You're not raking beauty bark. You're a ranger now.
Yeah.
And so I went down there, and thank God I passed all phases first time go.
Oh, nice.
Dude, there's some people that do like 3 phases or each phase 3 times.
Yeah, they're down there for a year.
I don't understand it, man.
Yeah.
They're tougher than me, man. But yeah, so right at the end of Ranger School, 9/11 happened. And then as soon as I got back, we just started deploying. The op tempo picked up, and then that's what the Ranger Regiment was for the next 15 years.
If you're watching and wondering what I'm holding here, this beautiful piece of equipment, this is the Smith & Wesson Volunteer. It's one of my favorite firearms from Smith & Wesson. And I am a proud ambassador of Smith & Wesson firearms. I have been a lifelong fan of Smith & Wesson. They are one of the most iconic American companies, have been around for 170 years, making the best firearms, Second Amendment focused. And I love the people there. This from the CEO to the vice president that have become personal friends of mine. They are supporters of our military and first responder communities. In fact, they are supporters of Mighty Oaks, which makes them the premier sponsor of this show. And if you are in the market for one of the best firearms out there, then whether it's a rifle, a pistol, for whatever reason, for hunting, for self-defense, you need to get yourself a Smith & Wesson. You can't go wrong with Smith & Wesson. The quality, the craftsmanship, and the company itself is no way you go wrong. So check out Smith & Wesson and get yourself one of the most iconic American firearms you get your hands on. Smith & Wesson, my go-to, and a proud supporter of Mighty Oaks and our military and first responder communities. All right, guys, I want to thank one of our show sponsors. By the way, all the sponsors for Resilience are supporters of Mighty Oaks for our military and first responder communities. No better one than Gators. Gators has been serving the military and first responder communities with the most incredible American-made eyewear for 35 years. Lifetime frames. Before I got involved with them professionally, I wore Gators all over the world through military operations. The ballistic lenses are something I really believe in. The aluminum frames, just the clarity of the lenses, their polarization. I wore them for skydiving because they have a polarized lens that allows you to see digital screens. And so for skydiving, shooting, you name it, all the crazy activities I do, I wore Gators. And then now I'm blessed to be in a relationship with them. And they're an amazing partner for Mighty Oaks. The best eyewear out there. Again, lifetime frame, American made, 35 years of service to our military and first responder communities. There is no better eyewear out there than Gators, and they look super cool. So I love mine, and get yourself some.
What was that? I have a question for you guys, both of you guys, because y'all were in. What was the shift after 9/11?
It was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, what was that like?
Bro, we went from... Because here's the thing. A lot of people go into the military for, it's family tradition or college benefits. But if you've worked your way up to being part of a special operations unit, you want to go to the big show.
Yeah.
I remember at Third Force, everyone was like, let's go do this.
Let's do this.
Yeah, it's like, hey, what's up, sir? Like, no one was like, oh my gosh, we're going to war.
Yeah, no.
Everyone was like,
can't
let's freaking
wait,
go. Like,
dude.
yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy, man.
High level of motivation, eagerness. Yeah.
And it was funny too, because he was my CO at the time, company commander, Chris Donahue, who is a general now. He was actually the last boot on the ground in Afghanistan.
I recognize that name.
Yeah. And one of the last company formations that we had before I went to Ranger School, he's like, listen, Rangers, we've been at peace for a long time. 1993 was the last time that the regiment saw combat in Mogadishu. And if you study military history, combat is coming. Combat is coming. And this isn't me trying to rile you guys up. I'm just telling you, statistically, I believe it is a fact that half of the men standing in this formation will be deployed to combat. And then boom, it happened. It was like his Nostradamus moment, you know?
Yeah.
But dude, I tell people this too all the time. Like deployments in combat is fun.
Sure.
Some of the coolest times of my life and some of the worst times, but I also didn't go through like, I never lost close friends. Like I think I was a good luck charm or something. You know, we would replace a unit that lost a bunch of guys. Like 1st Ranger Battalion was up on Roberts Ridge, and then we replaced them. And I was like, man, it's hairy here now. And then we didn't fire a shot that deployment, you know? And so like a lot of my deployments there was some heavy combat, but I never went through a lot of the trauma that a lot of guys did. Like I know like 2-4 and 2-5, those Marine infantry units in Ramadi when I was there, they were taking 30% casualties of to their platoon.
Yeah, 3-5 in Iraq and Afghanistan was like, I think they had 27 KIAs in a deployment.
It's insane.
75 amputees.
It's insane, man. So like, you know, I got a lot of what I would consider like the good aspects of combat without seeing a lot of traumatic things happen to my friends and my teammates. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that. You know what I mean? Like that's a good thing on deployment. So
yeah. Even in that, you know, like, I mean, horrible, the loss of friends and stuff like that, but you're right. The deployment experience is a life like milestone, a moment of your life, and the experience. It'll change the lenses you look at the world through would be forever changed
for
by that one 6 month or 9 months or 12-month deployment or if you're in the Army, 15-month deployment.
Man. Well, that's what I tell people too, is like, you got 14 deployments? That's crazy. And it's like, well, there's a caveat to that. My deployments are 3 months long.
Yes.
And so it's like, that may sound like a lot, and it is a lot when you add it all up. It was like 5 years on boots on the ground. But at the same time, man, those kids that were doing 18, that's like a PCS move.
Yeah. I always kind of make that point because people are like, you got 8 deployments. And I'm like, yeah, mine were like, you know, anywhere between 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. But I also, I mean, you know, I like to be very transparent with people. I was an Army Ranger in Afghanistan, and I fired my rifle 0 times in a year there.
That's a good thing.
And dude, we were working hard too. Yeah. We were hitting like HVT suspected locations. We were QRFing all over the place. We were patrolling the Hindu Kush constantly. My PL at the time, his name was, he was Lieutenant Satterlin. He's still in. I think he's a full bird colonel now. Absolute stud. And his whole thing was like, I'm not having my Rangers with idle hands. You guys are out doing Ranger missions. And
that's probably a big part of why you didn't have to fire your rifle because of that.
And that's exactly right. Yeah. Like we were a hard target and everybody knew it, man. Yeah. And the safe house we were operating out of in Barry Cout, as soon as our platoon left, it got overran.
Yeah.
The 82nd took it over, and within weeks it got overran. And it's like, wow, we didn't know it at the time, but Lieutenant Satterlin, and he was a Mustang officer. He was a E6 before making the switch. So just very dialed in. Yeah. And it was real crazy to hear that a short amount of time after that place blew up.
It's a projection of where our nation is right now, right? When America's strong, the world's a safe place. When America's weak, I mean, the world is burning down. And look at our country right now. And it's same in combat. When you see a unit that's like presents a strength and a presence, and like, you know, what's the acronym? FO, FAFO, yeah.
Hey, you told me I couldn't say those.
I didn't say it, but FAFO, like when you project that,
F around and find out.
I mean, man, they don't.
And you know, at the time, like, I mean, Rangers are motivated people by default. You're not there if you're not. But even being a fit, motivated person, it's like Lieutenant Satterlin wants us out again. He's like, get your team and get on that ridge line and patrol for the next 3 days. Do comm checks on these times with your embedder. And dude, I was 21 years old leading patrols. I think about that now.
I think about that. Like dude, it made sense back then, but now I look at other 21-year-olds. I'm like,
Sergeant,
oh my gosh.
Sergeant Anderson, take your team and a gun team and patrol up to that mountaintop and set in a patrol base for 3 days and provide overwatch for that pass coming from Pakistan. Roger that, sir. And off we go. And to think like that was just normal. That's what I did. That's who I was at the time. And now I look at 21-year-olds, and I'm not saying like, I'm not one of those guys that's like all these kids are just useless. Like I got a ton of great kids in my Jiu-Jitsu academy between the ages of 19 and 25, but I still look at them like kids. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I was like, I can't imagine you leading a patrol in Afghanistan, but that's what we did.
Yeah,
you know,
I was just watching a video with Jeremy Stolneckers. He's part of Mighty Oaks, and he's a big part of Mighty Oaks. And we were working on this documentary. He just ran. He did 22 marathons in 22 days, and for Mighty Oaks, like 500 and something miles.
Ridiculous.
But in the documentary, they show him. He was the infantry platoon commander of a CAT platoon at 1st Battalion, 5th Marines that led the tip of the spear for the infantry unit across Kuwait to Saddam's palace, and he's 24 years old. And he's got 75 infantry Marines under him leading this thing. And he's giving this speech. It's really cool. He's giving this speech to these 75 Marines about, hey, we're about to cross the border. So we're going to do. And it's like such confidence. But he's like a 24-year-old kid, like he's a lieutenant, like infantry lieutenant. And it's like crazy to think that our military, I mean, we look back and think, I can't believe that was us. But actually currently today, there's young 24-year-old platoon commanders and 21-year-old
doing the job.
Like that are doing their job and they're doing it well.
Man,
and it's you know.
Yeah, I mean, I was slotted. Here's a crazy story. I was slotted to jump into Afghanistan on October 19th, 2001, my 21st birthday. That was the invasion with 3rd Ranger Battalion.
Yeah.
And Alpha Company 2nd Ranger Battalion was supposed to be attached to that mission. And we were in Amman, Jordan on an airfield getting rigged up, ready to go. And 3rd Ranger Battalion was in Qatar. We were in Amman, and then we were supposed to meet and hit the objective together.
Oh, you Army guys want that little mustard stain, right?
Dude, of course you want the mustard stain. The mustard stain has a lot of heritage to it. You know, it's like World War II and Vietnam guys. Like,
for those that don't know, the mustard stain is a combat jump in the Army. It's the only one that gets it.
But the next story will tell you how we've spoiled the mustard stain. But right before the mission, my first sergeant comes out of the talk. He's like, everybody form up. And he was like, mad. And he's like, we've just been cut. They've decided that Objective Rhino is a battalion-sized mission and they cut attachments. What? So we sat on the airfield and listened to the invasion on comms. And then we didn't get to go in and do any follow-on missions. They sent us back stateside. When they cut us from the mission, we ended up going back stateside, and it was like
terrible.
And the thing is, they killed one dude on that objective, and he got shot like 200 times because every ranger that walked by him was like, "I'm getting some too."
Yeah.
And so, but just the historical significance of being on the jump. Like a lot of people, like the Marine Corps is who convoyed up to Kandahar. They took Afghanistan. I was like, yeah, but we secured an airfield for them to land their vehicles. And then they went and took Kandahar airfield. And man, just, you know how it is, right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time. That's your whole military career, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but fast forward a couple years, the regiment wanted to do a show of force jump on the Iranian border of Afghanistan. And they said, Alpha Company is going to take that. And so a show of force jump out in the middle of nowhere, and you're going to wear mustard stains for that? I don't know how those World War II veterans feel about that, but it gets worse. You ready for this? Hey, Anderson, you're going to take your team out there the night before. You're going to fly in on CH-47s with some Air Force CCT guys that are going to do dirt density measuring to make sure that the C-130s can land and pick us back up. Oh, okay. So me and my team went out there. One of those pictures that I sent you is where I was sitting on that hillside with the bandana on. Yeah. That was that location. Okay. And we flew out there on 47s, and they did their dirt measuring, and they said, yep, it's good enough for the C-130s to pick up the chocks. They did their show of force jump, and everybody in the company got mustard stains except my squad. So people are like, mustard stain check. I was like, you think I'm doing push-ups for that? I stayed the night out there. Right?
Yeah. You guys jumped in and then took off, right?
Yeah.
Landed, took off. Yeah. That kills it.
But you want to know what was also kind of upsetting about that? And it's like, the regiment is not without its faults. No military units are. It was a show of force jump, right? And because it was show of force, there were people that weren't taking it serious, and they were bumping 203 gunners. They were bumping SAW gunners to put S-shop officers in so they could get their mustard stains.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it was a
right. And it's like, dude, God forbid. Like, I know that you got the intel and everything looks like it's going to work out fine, but what's the number one rule of a plan is that it goes to a word that I can't say on your show. And so, God forbid, we need a SAW out there. but I got the S4 lieutenant. Like, what are we doing? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that started to drive me away from the military.
Yeah. And it's, progressively.
I can't even imagine.
Got worse. Yeah.
We could do a whole other. I got jiu-jitsu students that are active duty because my academy's close to the naval base. I hear it all the time, man.
Yeah.
It's insane. So
yeah, it's unfortunate, very unfortunate, and politics steer whatever administration that steer this culture in the military, which shouldn't. The military should be apolitical, but it's not.
But it's not.
It's not.
It's not. And I get that's one of the biggest questions I get asked both online and from my jiu-jitsu students. Hey, I'm interested in joining. What do you think? And I'm like, I would never tell you not to.
Sure.
If you're getting that calling, then I will respect you for going and serving. But if it was my son, I would say sit this one out and see what happens politically over the next 12 months and see if it becomes more conducive to serving under an administration or under a government that seems like it has your best interest in mind.
America's best interest.
In mind. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
How crazy is that though? Like sitting back and me listening to you say that, Greg, it's like, oh my gosh.
It's scary.
That we're in a place where we have to tell our children, hey, maybe you shouldn't go serve your country right now because it's going to be more detrimental to you.
Well,
yeah, man.
Wow, I'll tell you this too, though, man, because I'm very honest about my experience. I'm very honest about reflecting and looking back at who we were and what we did. And if I'm being 100% honest, did I need to be on the streets of Ramadi, Iraq, shooting people for the interests of America? Looking back on it at 43 years old, I don't think so. I just don't think so. Now, I don't have a bunch of grievances about it. I'm not all tore up about it because I chose to be there and I actually really enjoyed it. Like at the end of the day, it's young men with different ideologies agreeing to fight each other to the death. And it's actually a good time. Yeah. But at the same time, on like a global level, like it detach a little bit and look at it, remove emotions and try and look at why we were there. We were lied to, we never found the weapons of mass destruction. And it just makes you think like, I think the government powers are utilizing our bravest men and women to push these endless wars
and become wealthy.
And it's pretty despicable, man. And it would be hard for me to send my son into something like that without having that honest conversation with him first. And if he were to say, hey, I get all that. I just want to get it on. Yeah. I get that too.
Yeah.
I get that. I get that too, man.
Yeah. That's one of the things I have a big issue with as Americans not educate themselves as they look at the last, I'd say 20 years, more than 20 years now, but since 9/11, they look at Iraq and Afghanistan as one war, one thing. And I am 100% still bought in, soul in the mission of Afghanistan. And I'm proud of my time in Afghanistan. Iraq, I'm where you are.
Yeah.
I believe we were lied to. And so those two are very different, different conflicts. It's not the war on terror.
No, I agree with that. With that said, I think Afghanistan, I mean, you were there. Yeah. I think it could have been handled very differently
for sure
from the get-go.
For sure.
Like
it could have been declared a victory. It's very early on.
It's very hard for you take a bunch of kids that are 19 to 25 that are trained in war fighting, and now all of a sudden your job is nation building. Yeah. And that never works out well. It just never does.
No.
Yep. And you try and push a Western ideology on a people that their heels are dug in on their ideology. Where's that going to go? Yeah. And we ended up seeing where it goes. Who's in charge in Afghanistan now? And it's crazy to think.
We could have early on declared a victory in the war on terror and then support and advise and had the international community continue to support, just as it was support and advise the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police as the international contingent. And then the fate of Afghanistan would have been on them. But so it was definitely mishandled through multiple administrations, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, and so but right now, I mean, look, right now it's the worst it's ever been. And, to your point earlier, like it's very scary. Like I just did not just a few months ago, did a Fox News op-ed on this subject of the national security being jeopardized because legacy families that are like my family, for example, 84 years of service, like families like mine are not having their sons join. Yeah. Both my sons, served in the Marines. One is still in, but like I have a few buddies who were like 3-generation SEALs and their sons were raised to be SEALs and they're not they're not going in now.
That's becoming more and more common.
Yeah. So a lot of the special operations guys, these multi-generation families are not serving because exactly your concerns. And that impacts our national security.
Well, and at the end of the day, like on my podcast, I put on the tinfoil hat fairly often, right? But I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves, can come to the conclusion that our government does not have our best interest at heart.
No, I agree with that.
And if that's the conclusion that you draw as a man, that's pretty scary, actually.
Yeah.
You know,
I've never felt that way until the last
couple of years.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah. Even, you know, I'm obviously not a fan of Obama, but even during then, I never felt that way.
No. And I tell the younger guys that. I'm like, for the longest time, you know, the Republican versus Democrat debate was something that, like, it was more policy driven than like this deep seated personal hatred that people have for each other now. Mm-hmm. Like, if your friend voted for Obama, nobody cared, right?
Yeah.
But if you like someone that's going to vote for Trump versus someone that's going to vote for Biden, they can't even share the same room.
Yeah.
You know,
I can't even have an intelligent conversation with someone that would vote for.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, we have nothing to talk about, like, because you're dumb. Probably gay and you're dumb. I'm sorry.
No, you're right though. I mean, dude, I'm up in Seattle. Yeah. Like, I'm in the epicenter of all this crazy propaganda and brainwashing that they're doing to our kids. And the government, and when I say the government, like on all levels, like the Department of Education, like I had to pull my kids out of public school for the stuff they were coming home and telling me. And it's like, why can't you just, I'm paying for them, right? Like, our tax dollars are funding this. Why are you teaching them about LGBTQ culture? Why are you teaching them that? And it's not that I'm anti that. I'm anti-freedom. Yeah. You want to do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Like, we're jiu-jitsu guys. One of the most diverse places you're ever going to find is a jiu-jitsu mat.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think anybody cares who you have sex with or what God you worship or what color your skin is. That's all force-fed as propaganda to intentionally cause division. And they're doing it to our children. And like, she's 15 now, but she came home, you know, she was like 10 or 11 and was like, you know, we were talking today at school and now I'm wondering if I'm going to choose to be straight or lesbian when I get older.
Wow, dude.
And I said, you're 10. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I said, when you desire another human being sexually and you decide to start partaking in that, you're going to know what you like. And then when that day comes, whoever you are, I'm still going to love you because I'm your dad. But that is a conversation that you should be thinking about having with yourself in 5 years. Yeah. It's absolutely asinine that at 10 years old, you're wondering if I'm going to be lesbian when I grow up, because that's what they're talking about at school.
Yeah, it's being the conversation's being forced.
You know, and it's you know, it's crazy to me, if we're allowed to go off on tangents, right?
Yeah.
Is we're teaching these kids, and it's very prevalent up in Washington. You're in the wrong body. You're actually a boy. You're actually a girl. You're in the wrong body. Can you think of a darker thing to tell someone? Like, every single teenager or adolescence goes through periods of insecurity, self-discovery, confusion, learning about who they are. And you would have the audacity to tell a young woman who's in that state, well, it's actually because you were born in a wrong body and you got shortchanged. Yeah. Your body's wrong. Yeah. Like that's evil. It is. It's evil and it's intentional.
It's not political. It's not ideological. It's evil.
And we're just sitting back and watching, and that's just one of the tiers that of their plan to just keep everybody in this divisive state. And it's crazy, man.
Well, that's like that's the topic of resilient parenting. Right?
Yes.
Like, you know, the word resilient applies to so many things, but as parents, we have to be resilient. I mean, especially in today's times, is because the entire world is telling our children that something opposite of what we're trying to tell them. And you have to be resilient in your parenting in all aspects. You know, we want what's best for our children. And it's our responsibility to teach them the ways that they're supposed to walk. And it's not the government's responsibility. It's not the school's responsibility. That's right. But unfortunately, there's this convenience that we've been talking about, right? And this convenience from the lack of hardship, that it's easier to allow the school to tell the children how to live their life than it is for a parent to do so.
One of the things that I think our society is confused on is we use the term public school system. It's not a public school system anymore. It's a government school system. And we talked about earlier, the government does not have the best interest of Americans in mind. And, this is a government run school system. It has been for a long time. It's just, now it's just really went all in to push an agenda. And that is not an agenda that I align with as an American.
And that's why, so what are you going to do? We'll take responsibility. And I pulled my kids out. And a lot of people are like, I can't afford private school.
Can't afford not to.
I can't really afford it either, but I have to make it work because the alternative is my children's brains being poisoned.
Yeah.
That bill is not something that me and Jenny are jumping up and down about. We have goals and financial goals that we're trying to meet and stuff. And that put a big damper in it. But guess what? What's your priority? If your children aren't your priority, you shouldn't have had children.
Right. And
at the end of the day, you can also homeschool. And I know that, or co-op, there is options other than sitting back and bitching while your children's brains are being poisoned. You know?
Yeah. You can't, like I said, people said you can't afford not to. It's like the police officer saying I can't afford jiu-jitsu. You can't afford not to.
Every cop that can't afford jiu-jitsu is also driving a brand new Ford Raptor on 33s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, before we get too far off the military conversation, I really want to hear this story selfishly, and I think it's a story that the audience needs to hear. I've read it. I really love the way you reflect on what's happened in your life. And we talk about this a lot in Resilient a lot. It's mind, body, spirit, and social, the pillars of resiliency. And you do a really good job of reflecting on the things that have happened. So if you don't mind sharing with the audience, can you share the story of the Black Hawk crash at Bagram Air Base?
So one of the billets that regiment was tasked to fill on the war on terror was QRF, which is quick reaction force. And my platoon, I did 2 deployments where I was slotted on QRF, and it sounds cool. Did you ever work QRF?
No.
Okay.
No. Definitely a Ranger thing, right?
Rangers usually fill that billet. I think there's some other units that may do it at times, but basically you are sitting on the airfield in kit, or I forget what our time was, but you have 2 minutes from the time you get the call to be loading on the aircraft. So you're always right there ready to go. And there's weeks and even months where hardly anything happens. And so that was the billet I was filling. We were in Bagram Airfield. And then one night we got the call and they said, a Black Hawk just crashed not too far from here. And anytime anything is happening in combat, contrary to what you see on television, it's just mass confusion. Was it shot down? Yeah. Was it pilot error? What's going on? Nobody knows anything. We just know that an aircraft went down and we're responding to it right now. It was close enough to Bagram that my PL said, you know what? Let's have 2 squads get on your Blackhawks and 2 squads just jump in your Humvees and start driving there as fast as you can and see who gets there first. And we ended up getting there almost the exact same time. And it was a TF 160th. So the SOAR guys, it was one of their DAPs, and they were out just doing training flights outside of Bagram, and were doing a gun run and didn't pull up in time and just went in like a dirt dart, bad visibility. Wow. So it ended up being pilot error, but at the time we didn't know that, And so when you show up and you don't know what's going on, you just have to treat it as such and put your security element in place and start extracting people and providing medical attention. And we showed up and it's pitch black out and it's just, everybody's confused. We're pulling these guys out of the Blackhawks, and there was 4 people on board. 3 of them were clearly dead, KIA, by the time we got there. And then there was 1 guy that we were hopeful for who ended up passing shortly after we evac'd him back to Bagram. But during that whole ordeal, as the guys were pulling the dudes out of the Black Hawk, there was one of the guys, his name was Gibbons, Chief Gibbons. His patches got ripped off of his shoulders, right? So we ended up, there was an element that moved back to Bagram with the casualties, and then my squad stayed out and secured the crash site. And they said, you're going to secure the crash site until we decide if we're either going to blow it in place or do some type of recovery mission. We ended up recovering it, and they took it back to Bagram. The next morning when the sun was shining, we were looking at where they were getting pulled out, And I saw this happening in real time when it was happening, but I walked over and I saw that there was still more. There was blood, and then there was a couple of his patches underneath the airframe under like this chunk of Blackhawk. Because I don't know if you've ever seen a helicopter burn in, but it's like just exploded.
Yeah.
There was black pieces of Blackhawk for like the size of a football field. It was crazy. And
Because it's a light frame.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so as we were extracting them, I noticed that the patches were getting pulled off, and I put one of them in my pocket. And then the next morning I saw there was a couple more on the ground, and I was like, I don't even know what really made me want to pick his patches up. It was just kind of, in that moment, I was like, okay, I picked him up, and there was blood on him, and just put him in my cargo pocket. And then there was a little piece of Blackhawk that was like this big. It was laying with the patches, and I picked that up too and just threw it all in my pocket. And we ended up having the aircraft recovered. They sent out a big flatbed and towed it back to Bagram. We got back to our tents, and I pull out my pocket, and I got this guy's patches with blood on them and a piece of the airframe, and just threw it in my footlocker. And I don't know why I did that. Like, to this day, I'm still like, what about that made me want to grab those little pieces that were on the ground? Redeployed home, took them with me. Got out of the Ranger Regiment, took them with me, and I put them in my nightstand. And those patches and that piece of Blackhawk were in my nightstand for 14 years.
Wow.
So that's like, and I'm not a hoarder, you know what I mean? But there was, if I'm being honest with myself, that was probably a piece of that, a memory of that mission that I was just holding on to for some reason.
Yeah.
We also were part of his funeral procession in Bagram, where we were the pallbearers, and it was very emotional for me. And it was, like I said, I never had teammates die in battle. I shouldn't say that. I had lots of teammates die in battle that I was present for.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very different thing when you get the call. It's like, hey man, you hear what happened to so-and-so.
Sure.
That was like my first time. There's dead Americans right in front of me. And I'm in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it was heavy, you know, and not heavy to the point where it's like, I mean, we've all seen guys in combat like lose their cool, and like, there was just a lot of emotion around that. And especially the next day, or not, I don't remember if it was the next day or a day or two later, but when we did their funeral procession and we loaded them on the aircraft with the flag draped coffins, it was just heavy, man. And so that memory was just something that was part of my journey. And then 14 years later, now we had social media and the whole world's connected. And I was like, I wonder if his wife, first of all, I wonder if he even had a wife. I wonder if she would want these things. Like, is that, and I kind of went back and forth with myself, because I'm like, dude, it's been 14 years. The last thing she probably wants is to open an email and be like, hey, guess what? You know? Yeah. And so I talked to some friends, I talked to some females that I'm close with. And the resounding response from them was, if it was my husband, I would want to know. And I would want to hear from you. And so I said, okay, let's do some research. And I found, his name was Tom Gibbons. He had a daughter. At the time of the crash, she was 3 years old. So now she's 17, right?
Wow.
Every 17-year-old girl's on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I see, there she is. There is a 0% chance I'm reaching out to a 17-year-old girl with this story, though.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I have to figure out how to get a hold of mom, and was able to connect the dots and then find her mother and sent that email, which I forwarded it to you so that you can read it.
Yeah.
And I was very careful in how I worded it. And I said exactly that. I'm like, you know, if you've already found closure, I apologize for bringing up something that maybe you've already moved past, but due to the people in my life that have encouraged me to reach out to you, I've decided that I'm going to. And at the end of the day, I have a couple things that belong to your husband. They don't belong to me. And I think you deserve to have them. And man, her response, like brought me to tears.
Mm.
And you told me it brought you to tears.
Yeah, bro. I was
reading it.
choked up reading the story, man.
And she said, and I'll probably get choked up telling the story. She said something along the lines of like, man, I was having a real bad day.
Yeah.
And she was going through a hard phase. And she goes, every time I go through a hard phase, he finds a way to wink at me. And that's what he did today.
Yeah.
And then she goes, you want to hear the craziest thing is that we never heard anything about that night, what transpired, what it was like, who was there, what happened. She goes, the 160th, like on one hand, like they take care of the families, but I mean, it's the middle of the war on terror. OPSEC was at an all-time high.
Right.
And his wife and his brother never got any closure.
They didn't know what happened.
They didn't know what happened. And so to be able to talk to one of the men that pulled her husband out of that aircraft, she said it gave her and her family, her brother had a bunch of questions. Because, I mean, you know how it is. Like, the unknown is the worst. Sure. I would rather know bad things than not know anything at all, right?
Right.
And
you got to assume the worst anyway.
Well, and here's one thing that's crazy. His daughter, you know the one thing that she was dying to know her whole life? Where did the crash site happen? Where did my dad lose his life? And I sent her a Google
right here
map with a marker. This is where it happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was 3. She doesn't even remember him, but still, like you're growing up in a family that went through a massive amount of trauma, losing your father. So even though she may not have went through that at the time, she still needed closure on that journey too.
Yeah.
And so I was able to give them some of those little tidbits, right? And then she goes, we would actually love to have his patches, to have something tangible from him from the night he died would mean more to me and my family than you'll ever know. And so I packaged those patches up in that little piece of the Black Hawk, and they lived in Tennessee, and mailed it to him. And she wrote me, she said, your package arrived today, but we just had to put it in its corner. It just had to sit there. Mm-hmm. And she goes, and it sat there for a long time until we were ready to open it as a family. And she said when they did, like, it was really powerful for him, and it meant something to him.
Yeah.
And like I said in that post, the reason that I wrote that is because through the war on terror, lots of people had lots of different experiences. And now that we have the technology that's allowed us to connect, basically, you can almost find anyone these days, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a story about somebody or a memory about somebody, there's a good chance that there's somebody that's dying to hear it. So maybe go out there and seek those people and share those tales and keep those people's memories alive. Because when I did it, I found that it was tremendously beneficial for the family. And so, like, they couldn't have been more grateful to be able to have answers from that night. And then when they opened those patches, they said, like, it literally aided in giving them a sense of closure.
Sounds like it did for you too.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
And you want to know what was weird too is, 22 years old or whatever I was actually doing that, wasn't bothered by it.
No, I didn't mean anything then.
It wasn't, you know what I mean? It was like, don't get me wrong. Like when we were loading them on the planes, the emotion of it at the time felt heavy, but it wasn't like, I never had any of that. Like I can't sleep, or if I hear a firework, I freak out. Like none of that stuff ever. I don't think I had any of the PTS issues that a lot of veterans talk about.
Yeah.
And we could get into that next because I have a lot of theories on that. I don't think people have PTS. I think they lack belonging. I think that is what is the foundation of PTS, is not having a network of people that you love and trust and share time and space with. But I honestly think the reason the story started affecting me more as I got older is because I got married.
Yeah.
I started a family.
Yeah.
I had a little daughter. And then I was like, man, I have a 3-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
This guy had a 3-year-old daughter, and he still went to war. Because I'll tell you what, my last deployment was 2009 because my wife emailed me a picture of a pregnancy test. And she goes, when are we going to put this stuff behind us? And I thought, like, she's right, man.
Yeah.
She's right.
You know, like you were saying though, like you don't like at the time you weren't thinking of anything, but it's like what was, you know, subconsciously, you know, or as Christians, I'm like, man, was the Lord orchestrating this so that you could then gift this family closure later in life? You know, something, you know, like imagine the power of this story that's being unfolded. That seems really insignificant at this time, but now you get to let this little girl and her mother, you know, have some closure with her father who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
Yeah.
And that's a gift, bro. I mean, seriously.
And that was, I mean,
there you go. Behind you.
Right on the left,
right
here.
Oh,
yeah.
Or I said Tim. That's my bad. It was Tom Gibbons. Yeah, there they are, man. And you can see like,
that would have went back with his personal effects. It would have just been part of the. It would just been like one blanket part of the story, but for it to come 14 years later from someone who had eyewitness testimony, you know, I think that's
it's powerful, man.
It's different.
Yeah, it's powerful.
And you know, and I think about that, like that was just me on one QRF mission. I did several QRF missions, zipping people into body bags and stuff, and it's like that shit was that stuff was happening every day.
Yeah.
Right. Rangers were doing that mission every single day, and how many families are missing out on the closure.
Right.
You know?
Sure.
And it's not what I provided is like the end all be all, but 1% might be what they need.
Yeah.
You know
absolutely.
what I mean? And so, yeah, what a crazy story that was.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing. It was a super powerful story. And I think more of those stories need to be shared. Allows people connect with what's actually going on in the hearts of the people that are doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's a powerful story. So.
Yeah, one of the things you said, it made me think like, I was in quite some time before my first deployment. I was in almost 10 years. So my kids were if you had to ask the hardest things in my deployment, it would have been watching my kids' faces as I left.
Well,
like my son, like watching my son, like he was old enough at the time. I think he was probably around 8 or so. Like he would cry so hard that he would like collapse. Because
I mean, how old was he? You say 8 or 9?
Like 8. Hunter was like 8 or 9.
So old enough to know.
Oh yeah,
you might be getting killed.
He equated it that because he was always like he always wanted to be a Marine, like from little kid. So like he knew Dad was going to combat. He's very mature. Like at that time, and like his friends were my friends, and on the mat doing jiu-jitsu, and he was around all the guys from the team, and so he was trying to digest knowing that he may not see me again. And for me, it was as my deployments went further and further along, I started to literally believe that I'm not coming back.
I was literally, that was on the tip of my tongue. That's exactly what I was going to ask you, because, I didn't fire my rifle in Afghanistan. And then as soon as I went to Iraq, I went to Ramadi, and it was gunfights every single day.
Yeah.
And I arrived at the conclusion, I'm definitely getting killed in Ramadi, Iraq. This is going to be my last deployment. And I rotated in and out of there like 4 or 5 times. And you start to have like almost reckless behavior. Like when I'd go home from Ramadi, I'd blow all my money. I'd be drunk the whole time. Mm-hmm. And because I was like, when I go back, I'm probably getting killed. So let's have fun while we're here, right?
To live like you're dying.
Yeah. And it's it's a very common mindset amongst veterans. And people hear that and think it sounds like toxic or crazy. And it's like, I don't even necessarily think it's wrong. Like if I knew that I was going to die, why wouldn't I spend all my money? And now I have a family, obviously, but when you're a young single man, it's like, hey, this ride is about over. So let's have as much fun as we can and burn it in. Yeah. And so that was my mindset on deployments for a long time. And I think it would be a scary place to have that mindset, knowing that I'm leaving behind a family. And it sounds like you arrived there, huh? Yeah.
I mean, I'd be in Afghanistan. I just mentioned this on Sean Ryan's show. Like, I haven't talked about it much, but that was a point to where before I go to an operation, I'd write a sticky note letter to everyone, to my wife, to each of my kids. And probably the strongest message was to Hunter, my oldest. And I'd write, and I put it in a lid in my suitcase because I knew my personal effects would make it home. and I'd close it, and then I'd go out and do the operation. I'd come back and I'd throw them away because I didn't want anybody to see them, to find them. And then I would do that again the next operation. So I was in an imminent sense of like, you know.
Well, I've watched some of your stuff where you went through some very hard times.
Yeah.
Like emotionally and spiritually, and dealing with all of the stuff that you were doing over there. And then it sounds like that's probably a big piece of that puzzle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
trying to balance, because when you can just be a Ranger or be a Marine, and it's like, you don't have that weight of what's going on back home as even a consideration.
Sure.
Because I used to think about that very often. Because when I was on my, the team with Triple Canopy, it was half the team was retired CAG guys, and every single one of them had families back home, and they were in the car with me getting shot up. Right. And I remember thinking about that, like, man, like what are these guys doing?
Yeah.
How are they doing this? And, I mean, it sounds like you just have to deal with it however you deal with it, but it's
a heavy weight, and
it sounds like
crushes a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a much heavier weight than just being a young, single wild animal with no considerations, you know?
Yeah. We talk about, like, you know, you were talking earlier about PTSD and what it is and what it's not. I think a lot of, you know, a lot of times it's not a single traumatic incident, like cumulative, you know, they also call it cumulative stress disorder.
Yes.
Event after event after event after event, and the weight of a family and all this stuff just building up till it just, you know, spills over the top.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things you mentioned is just being around good people and having that community. And that's one of the pillars, right? That's one of the 4 pillars, social pillars. Do you surround yourself with the right people? Do you have a strong community and network? And you know, that's, you know, all these things factor in together for being resilient and bouncing back resiliency.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of different reasons why people get PTS or things affect people differently.
Sure.
Cause I have a friend that does have a very, cause I used to say that too. Like, I don't think most people's issues are like one incident, right?
No, yeah.
But I have a good friend who, called for fire, and he made a bad call. And when they went and did their BDA, it was 2 kids, and they were 8 and 10.
Yeah.
And he goes, my sons were 8 and 10 at the same time back home.
Right.
And he goes, and when I pulled because the locals had covered them up with blankets. And he goes, when I pulled the blanket back and saw 2 babies that I just murdered.
Yeah.
He goes, I saw my sons laying there.
Yeah.
And he's like, bro,
yeah.
I haven't been right since.
Yeah.
That moment is just haunting him.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
it's never one, like,
you know,
it's different for everyone.
But
like,
what I see in most people, right? Because I've had 5 teammates commit suicide since 2009. And almost all of them feel a lack of belonging. That's the thing that I see in most of them. And it's, guys want to keep chasing what we had in the Ranger Regiment or what we had in the contracting world. Because for people that don't understand, when you're in a contracting team, it feels just like the Ranger Regiment. You know what I mean? You're surrounded by a bunch of fit dudes that are working out, and you're training every day, and you're out there and you're doing real missions, and you're killing bad guys. Like, there's hardly any difference between the contracting world and active duty. And so you see those guys move past that, and they can never quite figure it out because that lifestyle defined them.
It's identity.
Yeah, it's identity. And if your identity, if the identity that you carry as a man, if the foundation of that is war, you're never going to do good back home. No. And it's sad, man. And I've had buddies. I had one buddy in particular that called me on several occasions when he's just like right on the cusp, you know? And when people tell you that, you're supposed to listen, right?
Sure.
Because they say people being verbal about it is obviously one of the biggest cues, but you also never think it's going to be your homie, you know? It's like, his name was Jordan Pyle. And it's like, dude, calm down. Let's talk, blah, 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 shoot the shit. All right. Looks like I got to check in on Jordan a little more often. And then days become weeks and weeks become months because that's just life. You're doing your own thing. You got your own career, your own family. You can't check in on all your buddies all the time. And then the next phone call I got is, yep, he shot himself. And he had a standoff. He like called the police and told them, like, you know what I mean? And had a SWAT team surround his house and like purposefully like gave himself no out, you know? And the crazy thing is, man, he loved jiu-jitsu. He was a big jiu-jitsu guy. And then he hurt his back and he couldn't train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And that ended up going on for years. And he's like, I'm no good anymore, man.
Yeah.
I can't even train. I don't even have my outlet anymore.
Yeah.
And then just started to spiral. And so every time I've seen one of my friends go through that, more often than not, if you trace it back far enough, it goes back to lack of community and lack of connection to people.
This is why I really love to pound home the message of that 4 pillars of resiliency, right? The mind, body, spirit, social, because clearly the physical fitness part was, important. And then mentally being in the right headspace, having the right perspective, having the right attitude, socially surrounding yourself with the right people, spiritually having a strong foundation. Because if you have all 4 of those and one of those is out,
you have the stability to stand still.
If you're leaning on one only,
there's no stability.
When it's gone,
there.
Man, everything's gone. And so I really think like having the intentionality behind building your life in these 4 areas, and there's tons of subcategories, right? Everybody has like, there's 7 pillars now, 8 pillars, but I really believe that all subcategories of those 4. If you're really intentional about building all 4 of those, when one's weak, the other one's strong, and you kind of carries you through it. And man, I'm out of shape right now, but I have a good community. My mind's not in the right space right now, but I have a real strong spiritual life. Like you're able to weather through those things, but it takes intentionality.
Yes, it does. No, that's a really good point to bring up, because I went through some weird times too, like trying to rediscover who I was, putting that behind me. And I never felt like I was really fully defined by that, but putting that in the rearview mirror after a decade of that and finding what's next, I was like, well, I guess law enforcement's next.
Yeah.
And law enforcement never filled that void. It never came close to it.
Right.
I never felt the camaraderie. I never felt like the pride behind the mission. And again, like I said, like looking back on the war in Iraq, like should we have been there? Like that's a discussion for a different day. When I was boots on the ground fighting in Ramadi, it was the most important thing in my life.
Because the people to your left and right matter.
And that's exactly right. And so you go from being this 24-year-old kid that's doing these things that you feel are very, very important to you. And then you go home and you're stocking shelves at Home Depot or something. And you don't assign yourself that same kind of worth.
Right.
And that's a tough journey to navigate for anybody, man.
Sure. I mean, your identity is tied in and the joke is, but it's not a joke. It's serious. You're never going to be that cool again. You're just never, there's nothing you're going to do.
I'll tell you what makes me think that I'm that cool again. Right? Because for the longest time, my jujitsu has been about me. Like that guy beat me up in Ramadi, Iraq, and I can't have that anymore. So I need to train and I need to take fights and I need to compete. And it was about me all the way until black belt. And it was about me for a while after black belt. And I've had a shift. And I would say this would just be in the last probably 24 to maybe 36 months at the most, where I get more pride watching my team grow than anything about me.
Yeah.
I get more pride, and maybe it's because it goes to what we opened the show with, talking about how many problems our youth are facing and how our boys aren't being pushed into growing into men. And when I see it happening on the mats in real time, I see these boys or these little girls that are timid, that are afraid, that don't look you in the eyes, and they're on the team for 6 months and they're completely different people.
Yeah.
And bro, I have these little girls that we do bow out like every jiu-jitsu academy. Yeah. But they have to give professor an extra hug before they go. And dude, you hear my voice, right? Yeah. And dude, I have 3 daughters. I know what a hug the foundation of that hug is love. I know what that feels like. And I get it from these girls. And when I feel that, I'm like, yeah, this is the mission you're doing right now is way more important than killing dudes in Ramadi, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
It's because you're not just changing individuals, which is important. And I know you get a sense of fulfillment from that, but you're also changing communities and culture.
Yes.
By doing that. And then, those little girls are going to be moms one day.
That's right.
And wives and their families are going to be different because of what you invested in them.
And I love my jiu-jitsu kids, but I'm also hard on them too. You know what I mean? Because that's who we are as martial arts.
It's because you love them.
That's right. And it's strange to me seeing like what kind of behavior is acceptable coming into my academy. And it's not that they're bad kids, but I'll have kids that will look at the ground while they're talking to me. Things like that. Yeah. Things that might not seem like a big deal, But I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, you're 12 years old. You're going to be a man soon. When men speak to other men, we look at each other in the eyes and we have our shoulders up and we have confidence and we have posture. Like these are important things. And you can see sometimes it's almost like a light switch in these little boys. And they're like, oh, like I get it, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I'm not here to save the world, but if I can save 1 or 2 or 10 people, and then you guys save 1 or 2 or 10 people, that's how we collectively make our society strong again, you know?
That's right. How long did you serve as a police officer?
So I did 5 years with the U.S. Marshals.
Okay.
I went the federal route first because coming home from a warrior in Ramadi, I was like, I got to do something badass, right?
Yeah,
right?
I wanted to be Tommy Lee Jones, chasing fugitives all over the country.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to say too many negative things about the Marshal Service because I'm very grateful that I got to be part of that agency because they stationed me in Los Angeles and that opened up more opportunity. That's where I met Bushesha and Joao. My jiu-jitsu journey was forever changed. A lot of good came out of it, but the agency as a whole, man, you're sitting in court and transporting prisoners more often than anything. And I would sit in a courtroom for 8 hours a day and then walk a dude to prison in his 3-piece shackles. And then you just hit repeat and you do it. And it goes on for years and years. And I was on the SRT team in Los Angeles, which is their special response team. So you get the cool guy warrants. And I always said, if SRT was a full-time job, I'd probably still be down there because they were good dudes. They were the guys. There was like, I think a 16-man team. And that was the team of guys that wanted to be good fighters, good shooters, good PTers. And it was a cool little subculture, but we would probably get maybe 1 warrant a month. It wasn't a super active team. And, also the culture is broken. They have a cultural leadership problem in that agency, which is very common in all of the Department of Justice agencies.
All the federal agencies, yeah.
And I wasn't impressed. The chiefs were some of the poorest leaders I've ever worked for. But I will say this, the best leadership lessons you learn are from the terrible leaders you work under as opposed to the greatest leaders you work under, right? Yeah. And so I should be thankful, but it became very apparent to me, this agency is not for me. And my dad got diagnosed terminal and his doctor gave him 6 months to live. And so I was in Los Angeles and I went to my chief and I said, hey, the whole reason that I left the military and contracting was to be more present. And now I've been gone for another 5 years. Sure, I get to go home for Christmas. And now my dad's dying. And I feel like I need to prioritize my family. I need to be there with him. Me and my dad had a very interesting journey from the time I was a kid. And he was very hard on me. We didn't really have a relationship. And then later in life, we became best friends. And I feel like I need to be there for the closure of this journey for him. Yeah, we'll get you up there. We're going to work with you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And a lot of back and forth. Be patient. We're trying to do it. And then one day I got an email. I'll show you guys when we get off the air because I saved it. It said, if your dad needs to be with you, he can move to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Like, dude, like I took the email into my supervisor's office and I can't say profanity on your show, but I said, hey, this just came from DC and I challenge anyone in this district, including you, including the chief, to say those words to my face, that my sick, dying father can move to Los Angeles if he wants to be around me. Say that to my face. I dare you. Calm down, Anderson. Listen, the DC, blah, blah. I said, no, I'm done calming down. Okay. Those are fighting words. Like if that guy that sent that email was in this office right now, he would no longer have teeth. So I'm done with you guys. Oh, you're being ridiculous. I said, I'm not being ridiculous. I'm going home to be with dad. So I tried to be reasonable and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So consider this not my resignation. Consider this me being put on unpaid leave or a leave of absence without pay. That's what it fell under. And that ended up being the worst thing you could do because now the agency had a billet that they couldn't backfill. It ended up taking like a year of being on that status before they could terminate me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, let's try another route. And I tried local law enforcement. And I'm here to tell you guys, the locals, local law enforcement, the guys that put on the uniform and patrol their beats, that is the bread and butter. That is the essence of the job of law enforcement.
100%.
Yeah.
Those guys I learned firsthand because I thought, I was a U.S. Marshal. Like, I didn't know anything as a U.S. Marshal. I knew how to put people in shackles and take them to court. And then our team would take down houses, but I already knew how to do that stuff from my previous job, right?
Yeah.
And so the day-to-day police work is done with your patrol officers. And it's a tough job, man.
Yeah.
And I always say too, like, I'm fully transparent. The agency that I worked for, we were under the Port Authority. So we dealt with 10% of what our Seattle PD counterparts do. Like, my jurisdiction was the Seattle Port area. But still, I mean, it's still Seattle. It's still drugs. It's still nonstop crime. It's a crazy life. And I enjoyed some parts of it, but if I'm being completely honest, I knew that there wasn't a ton of longevity in that job for me either. And I wasn't sure what was next. And then, you know how the story went. The COVID stuff happened.
Tell us about the video. So you decided to do a video from your car.
So, I mean, dude, we're police officers.
Right.
Our job, we swore to uphold and defend the Constitution and the rights of our citizens in which we serve. And every day in the lunchroom, we're watching police arresting people at parks. We're watching police shutting people's businesses down.
Over COVID.
Right. We're watching, I was in my department lunchroom when they had 2 police boats chasing that paddleboarder. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And by himself out on the ocean. So the government owns the ocean now. Like, what are we talking about? Yeah. And when I was sitting in the lunchroom, I'd be ranting and people would call me Crazy Anderson, but they all agreed with me. They're like, yeah, that's absolutely egregious. I would never do that. And I heard that so many times. I would never do that. I would never do that. Every cop in the lunchroom will tell you he would never do that. Well, if nobody would ever do that, why is everybody doing it? Did you know that they did some undercover sting operations in Southern California on jiu-jitsu academies?
Yeah, because they were putting a paper on the windows.
Yeah. So let's
look out, bro. I did not know that.
Yeah. Dude, you call yourself a police officer to serve and protect, and you're doing sting operations on guys that want to grapple. It was just disgusting.
Wow.
And so I made that video. I said, the breaking point for me was I was on patrol one day. I was in my car and I was listening to the news, and 2 ladies, it was here in Texas, got arrested for doing nails out of their house. And someone came over, undercover agents came over and had their nails done, and then they arrested these ladies. And I was like, dude, if you come into my house and arrest my mother, I'd probably kill you. You know what I mean? And this is coming from a cop, dude. Like, I didn't say that in my video. This is just the thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to take my mother out of my house in handcuffs, it's to the death now. I've killed men for way worse than that. And so I thought, like, dude, this has to stop because people are going to start killing cops. If that's the thought that I'm having, lots of people are having that thought.
Yeah, that was something that I thought was real dangerous because there is a line in a free country that people.
Yes. And so and if you listen to the video, that's why I said, listen, guys, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a virologist. This video is not about the validity of COVID. And this was in May. It was May 5th of 2020. So it's still pretty early on, but I was still seeing things that weren't making sense, right? Like in Washington state, what was deemed essential versus non-essential was anything that made the government money was essential. Anything that did not make the government money was non-essential. Like if you needed to go get tabs for your truck, little green sticker, that's essential because the government needs their $60. But any other store has to be shut down. Like things weren't adding up, right? But when I saw those women getting yarded out in handcuffs, I knew I needed to say something because my thought was I would shoot those guys if that was my mom and my sister. And that's what I said in the video. I said, I'm not here to discuss the validity, but what I am here to discuss is Americans' constitutional rights. And that was an illegal search and seizure. You are disregarding the Fourth Amendment. And you're doing it. Why? Because your governor is telling you to do so? Your mayor is telling you to do so? Our governors and our mayors do not supersede the Constitution. It's not how this country works. It's not how your job works. And if you continue to do this, what you're going to find is the American people are going to start pushing back. And that's dangerous for me. It's dangerous for you. And we need to stand up and say no. And if your governor or your chief doesn't like it, too bad. And apparently that was a message that people wanted to hear because it went super viral.
How many views did it get?
On one share alone, it was like 400 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
But
crazy.
crazy.
That's wild.
And here's the dirtiest part. My chief and my commander, man, and I liked working under these men. They were always good to me.
Mhm.
They always took care of me. I always had a good relationship with them. But a lot of men, when push comes to shove, they cower and they break. And the rumor is that the governor's office called them and said, take the video down. I never confirmed that,
Mhm.
but my chief and my commander, they both said to me, they said, everything you said in the video, we agree with. Everything that you said, we think is correct. But you can't say it in uniform. I said, our policy is clearly defined. I cannot be identified as a Port of Seattle police officer. That's why the badge is hidden. And if you notice in the video, my hat was turned around because I'm not speaking for the Port of Seattle, but I can certainly speak for the profession of law enforcement. I can do that. Well, you also spoke out against the governor and you can't do that. I said, I can speak out against any man I want to. In fact, I think we're morally obligated to. If we infer what a governor or a mayor is doing is unethical, we should be the first people to speak up and stand against it.
Or against the law.
Or against the law. That's right.
Constitution, yeah.
And so they said, you have to take the video down or you're going to be looking at getting terminated for insubordination. I said, fire me then. I said, you want to fire me for something you told me you agree with? Go ahead.
Look out.
Go ahead. I don't care. And so they did. But my Jiu-Jitsu Academy, I told some of you guys earlier when I walked in, that put such a spotlight on my story that my Jiu-Jitsu Academy grew by 600%.
Wow.
In a calendar year. We went from 25 students, and I mean, 25 students is more just like a fight club, right?
Sure, yeah.
I was a cop at the time. I had a core group of guys that were tough guys, and we had fun training. And that was about it, right? To now, I think we're at 240 students. It's a viable business model now,
Yeah.
you know? And we have a kids team, and we have women, and it's like, it's a real thing. And so it's weird how
You got a lot of great things. You got Guns and Geese.
Guns and Geese. Yeah, I started the
Get
podcast.
your podcast.
And I tell people, man, and this, you know, people get weird about money, right? Like
Yeah.
talking about money is like, I don't know why talking about money is taboo for people, but I tell this because it's important for police officers to know my podcast alone generates more income than I made as a police officer. Like try and wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
And I release one episode a week.
Yeah.
And I think we're coming up on 2 million downloads. So it's not a giant show. It's pretty big, but it's not giant.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a Joe Rogan show. If you're consistently getting good numbers, companies are interested in partnering with you.
Yeah.
And it can be, and I'm not saying start a podcast because you want to make
Sure.
money.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
saying that at all
Yeah.
because statistically it's a very, very, very slow process, right?
Yeah.
I lucked out and I had a viral story. Andy Stump had me on my show or on his show. And that kind of helped propel me into the world of podcasting. But the reason that I say that is because so many police officers are at a point in their career, and you guys were both cops, so I guarantee you've heard this probably thousands of times. 8 more years till retirement.
Yeah.
8 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds miserable.
Like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I've been I can't wait 8 hours for something I hate doing.
Me neither, right? And I was like, dude, this is your life.
Yeah.
This is your one time being a human being and experiencing life in the flesh. And you're willing to
People
give
get
yourself an 8-year sentence.
People get tied up on government people, local government, federal. They get tied up on pensions and don't realize that you don't need to work for an agency to have a pension.
Well, and statistically, if you work for an agency and get a pension, you will die within 5 years after drawing from it. You know what I mean? Like a lifetime of cortisol and hardened arteries. Like it did that. And bro, I'm so much happier now.
Gas station food.
You know what I'm saying? Like doing something that I'm passionate about and being around people that share the mission and want to partake in the things that I want to partake in,
Yeah.
i.e. because we basically built a big compound. It's CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu. And between the two sides of the house, we have over 500 clients. And it's, but you're around positivity. Day in and day out, I'm around positivity. If people are showing up to the gym, it's because they're ready to get after it. And then we put cold plunge and sauna and all the recovery modalities. We have 2 mat rooms. And when people show up, they have a smile on their face and they're excited. And for the first time in my life, that's my day-to-day interaction with people. And you don't realize, and you guys realize it because you walked away from the professional law enforcement. You don't realize how heavy it is until it's in the rearview mirror. Because I didn't have time to be sad about it or worry about like, oh, my back hurts because my body armor again. Because guess what? I'm putting it back on tomorrow and I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
Once you walk away from it, I had a lot of people like, you're getting younger somehow, And it's like, yeah, once you start living a life that's built around things you're passionate about. And dude, if you're passionate about being a cop, cool. We need good cops. And there are cops out there that are passionate, that are crime fighters that love doing the job. I love those guys. But if you're someone that hates it, trust me, there are other things out there. You just have to have the courage to step out and actually do it,
I think that's the takeaway, because we do need good cops, right? We need good cops. And unfortunately, the climate of policing encourages the good people that do it for the right reasons to leave.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying, and I think is what is important for people to hear, is that you don't have to be miserable. You don't have to suffer. Like there's other opportunities should you choose to do that. And there's nothing wrong with, and this was what's hard for me, is I think I got into the profession and thought, oh, I'll do 20, 30 years as a cop, right? And after 12 years, I was like, I still got 8 years to go.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so, but your identity is what we're talking about earlier, gets tied back to police work. And I'm not gonna lie, I have a calling to police work, and I still wrestle. I couldn't sit here and tell both of you in this room right now that I'll never be a cop again. I couldn't tell you that. But
you're still a reserve.
Correct. And I still get to have my hands in the pie a little bit. But I think it's important to realize that you do 2 years, you do 4 years, you do 6 years. Hey, thank you for your service. I
love that you said that.
Thank you for doing your service.
That's an important thing to say. And I was going to touch on that because a lot of cops feel like they're obligated, and other cops will actually, I've had people even tell me like, you abandoned the profession.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't abandon anything.
Yeah.
You give whatever time makes sense for you and your family to give.
It's a contribution.
And it's a contribution. Yeah. You got compensated for it. You did your duty. And what you did while you were doing your duty is what matters, not how long you do your duty.
Yeah.
And you don't owe anybody anything. And if you want to be a cop for 2 years and then it's time to move on, that's great.
Yeah.
Or if you want to do 30, that's also great. And people need to realize like the journey needs to suit your needs. And if walking away is what you need, it's not a dishonorable thing to do.
No.
It's weird how people attach. Yeah. And I got that same thing when I left the Ranger Regiment. Sure, my platoon sergeant told me, he goes, Anderson, we are already slotted for our next rotation to Afghanistan. Your team is going back to Afghanistan. So you're sending your team to Afghanistan without you. And I'm like, dude, don't put that on me.
Yeah.
I fulfilled my obligation, but that's what people do. And I think it's probably because that's something they feel when they look in the mirror more than how they feel about you.
They need people to be on that train with them.
Yeah. Well, I got people that reach out all the time and they're like, man, how'd you do it? Like, I'm so scared to leave. And that's usually what I go to, is that mindset of like, hey, like, well, for one, ask yourself, why are you still in it? Right. And because if it's because I'm 100% feel that I'm called to still be in it, then still be in it and deal with the hardship of being in it. But if you're struggling with feeling like you're ready to be out, but maybe you didn't do enough time, like, recognize the service that you put into it as a good service, acceptable. You did what you were called to do, what you felt like what you're
contributed to community.
You contributed to your community for X amount of years, and that's a good thing. So thank you for doing a good thing.
And I used to tell the cops back at my agency, because the port, you're making about $100K a year, which is great as a police officer, right? And I would tell people,
although very expensive to live up there.
Yes, true, right? It's a double-edged sword for sure. But it's like, you feel like you're in this place where you're lost right now. I said, there's lots of people that are lost that are making 0Ks per year. You feel like you're lost, but you're making 100K a year. Just understand that. Use your current position as a launching platform. I don't care if you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to start building a resume to apply for other agencies or other corporations, but you can do all those things. I mean, we had almost a firefighter schedule. We were 3 on, 4 off as a police officer.
Yeah.
But they were 12 and a halves. So when you were on, right? They were long days.
We did the same thing.
But when you have 3 to 4 days off every week and you can't build a path to where you want to go next, it's because you're being lazy.
Yeah.
Like, use the current opportunity that you have where you have good pay, good benefits. You're not just floating out in the unknown, and use that time to now build a trajectory to a new path. Yeah. And then when it makes sense to jump ship. And you know what's cool is I say this on my podcast a lot. And one of the coolest emails I get is from cops that are like, I finally did this because I've wanted to forever. And you're always in my ear saying that. And I finally pulled the trigger. And now, like, one of them owns an archery store in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because archery has been my passion. You know, things like that. Yeah. It's just cool to see, man. Because like you're the only person that's going to keep yourself shackled, but that's what most people do.
Guys, if you don't have precious metals, you got to get your hands on some. The world is not a stable place. Our banking system certainly is not a stable place. So it's important to have precious gold and silver on hand. For me, precious gold, precious silver, and also precious lead to be able to protect yourself. But look, if you are not already into this, you need to go to MidasGoldGroup.com. Our friends there are incredible people. They're incredible patriots. They love America, and they have the best resources on precious metals. The owner, James Clark, is a Marine Corps veteran. He's a patriot, and he is my friend also. And they're just incredible people who know this market inside and out. And you could go there, and if you mention my name, Chad Roby Show, you will get free silver. You'll get some free silver, and you can invest in precious metals and have tangible precious metals on hand in a time of need when those financial markets go down. Go to MidasGoldGroup.com and get your precious metals today. Guys, you heard me say before, you will never hear me promote something that I don't use and don't believe in. One of the supporters of this show is BioPro. I am a believer in this product, and offers you a complete growth factor profile. I mean, you're talking about improving your sleep, growing muscle, releasing your own growth hormones in your body, improving your metabolism, just bone density, the way you feel, your overall mood, your sexual desire, your libido, all these just incredible things that come naturally if you could trigger it from your body. As BioPro does that for you. There's a lot of benefits I've heard of from other pro athletes that take this from special operators. But for me personally, I've definitely noticed the increase in recovery. But the biggest thing I've noticed for me is my sleep. Sleep's important to me. I function well with all the stuff I have to do, from speaking, from writing, to running Mighty Oaks, to doing podcasts like this, and going on international operations. Like, I have to have good sleep in order to be able to function at my highest level. And I was not getting it. I would sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night. It was kind of choppy, and I was doing all kinds of things for years. And as soon as I started taking BioPro, I started getting 8 to 9 hours of solid sleep. That's why I'm just hammering home how much I love this product. The people there are absolutely amazing. They're supporters of our military and first responders. They support Mighty Oaks. And the product is absolutely incredible. You have to try it. Go to BioPro, and if you enter the code BioPro30, you'll get 30% off. That's not my code. I actually don't want a code. I want you to get 30% off. And so enter BioPro30, and you get 30% off. Get yours today. Yeah, that's great perspective for police officers. And I mean, I love your message because I think it transcends beyond police officer to everyone. The name of your podcast, really, Endless Endeavor, really. Yeah. I guess explain that. I love that name. So where'd you come up with that, and why is it?
Because so Endless Endeavor for me, I've realized that people are always seeking like a finality. Like once I make this much money, I'll be happy. Once I get to this body fat percentage, I'll be happy. Once I can bench press this much, I can be happy. Once I'm dating this girl, I'll be happy. And I'll tell you, I've met a lot of markers that I've set for myself. And then you get there and you're like, like black belt. You got your black belt tied around your waist, and guess what?
Yeah, like,
all the
crap,
dudes,
I don't know jiu-jitsu.
All the dudes in the room that kick your ass, they're still kicking your ass. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It doesn't matter what the dye is on the fabric of your belt. And it started to show true to me on almost every single aspect of life. And it's like we set these financial goals, and then we hit them, and we still feel broke.
Yeah.
But the more money you make and the bigger your business gets, the more problems you inherit, the more fires you have to put out. So it's like, as you grow as a person, the problems they never go away.
Right.
They just change. And don't get me wrong, like my life has improved in some manners dramatically, but there's also some new struggles that have popped up.
Sure.
And if you tell yourself like, oh, one day it's all going to be good, because that's what those cops are telling themselves. The day I retire, and they've all done a bunch of math too, right? So they know exactly how much money they're going to have. On this day, I'm going to have this much money and I'm not going to have to work and life's going to be good. And it's like, I hate to break it to you.
It's not.
The journey of life is not something that is all pleasure or all pain. It's a dichotomy. It's peaks and valleys, and it's never going to change. And that's one thing I hate about politicians, always promising this, promising that. If you vote me in, I'll make your life better here and I'll make your life better there. It's like, there's only one person on planet Earth who is responsible for making my life better, and it's me. You know what I'm saying? And I think once you understand that, hey, there's going to be hardships ahead, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, and there's going to be everything in between, and that's going to continue until my last breath, it's actually kind of freeing, you know? And for me, that's the endless endeavor. I'm going to be 70 years old, upset about who knows about something, you know what I mean? Because like that's just life.
It's the constant self-improvement.
Life is a struggle.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a struggle, and that struggle is where growth happens. And so once you start to understand, like we were fortunate enough as athletes and police officers and soldiers to learn like front and center, right in front of you. This is the result of a really hard struggle. When I put myself out there and I train hard and I show up and I bring the right energy, things start to get better, right? And so you understand in the struggle is where the growth happens. And there's never an end to that process. As soon as you think that process ends, that's going to be your death.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Guys, been great having Greg on the show, but if you want to listen to another great podcast, Endless Endeavor, I've listened to a couple episodes. It's awesome. We share actually, one of the sponsors of this show is one of the sponsors of your show. And in fact, I got connected with BioPro because of you.
Okay.
So you got Greg Lappin connected to BioPro, and then Greg got me on BioPro. And then I got a hold of Dustin, who's the owner of BioPro, founder of BioPro, and just incredible product. So we actually typically do like a read of the product, but I figured instead of doing a read, since you could tell us about why you use
Dustin
BioPro.
always says I am BioPro because my ads are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I just tell the truth, you know? For me, BioPro does a bunch of different things, right? And for people that don't know what it is, it's a growth factor, which is a derivative of HGH. And everybody's always so worried about, steroids and I'm going to get in trouble for this. And there are some commissions that ban that product. Mm-hmm. So I always tell my listeners, if it's banned by some commissions, probably pretty good, right? But it's never been shown to show any negative side effects. And it does a lot of good things. But for me, why I'm a believer in BioPro, and I'm sure you felt this too, is injuries on the mats happen substantially less. And when they do happen, you heal way faster.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm a Wolverine when I'm on BioPro. And dude, doing jiu-jitsu in your 40s, that's an endless endeavor in itself. You know what I'm saying?
It's a sleep factor that was the biggest thing for me. The nighttime one. I sleep so good since I've been. I had really worked on my sleep for years, and I got to where I was getting a solid 6 hours. And since BioPro, it's been like 8-9, like solid 8-9 hours of sleep.
I cut my hand with my chainsaw, and Dustin's always talking about how the growth factors have the ability to heal. I was like, well, if I'm drinking it and it heals, what if I just poured it on that wound and I just poured a BioPro on it? And I'm not kidding you. It was like, I've never healed that fast in my life. And I text Dustin. I say, hey, have you ever heard anybody say this? And he goes, well, we're not talking about it because it's still in trials, but yes, we're actually doing topical growth factor ointments and stuff because it is shown to heal burn victims like substantially faster. So the stuff's magical, man. And that is part of, for me, being an athlete. I call myself an aging athlete because it's like, it gets harder to be an athlete every year.
How old are you? I'm 48.
I'm 43.
Okay.
Dude, the wheels fell off for me though at like 39, completely fell off.
At 30, 38 was my peak year, I felt like.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
30, 38, 39 was my worst year.
Yeah.
They were telling me I needed a knee replacement and stuff. So, part of being someone that wants to continuously be active and be present in the academy and not just be present. I don't want to be the old guy that's on the side going, oh, hey, yeah. Like,
I want to be the old guy that everybody's talking about, like
kicking their asses.
Why the old guys still beating us?
Well, yeah, kicking their asses.
That actually
dude.
is the case, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, that's the case. That's right. That's the case at my academy too. But part of continuing to be that person is really taking the time to take care of yourself off the mats more than you take care of yourself on the mats. Like when we were 22 years old, had you ever even heard of a foam roller?
No.
Like what's that, right? A mobility routine? What are you talking about? You know? And so now I take the time.
Stretching.
Gay. Yeah.
You're like gay.
I try and.
Stretching.
Dude, I want to optimize myself though. You know what I'm saying? And so any little thing that I come across that I feel like, dude, I drink methylene blue every morning. I stand in front of a red light panel. I grounded my bed. Like I've done all of this stuff. And
I got to figure out, you ground your bed?
You ground your bed.
It's got a sheet, bro.
To a sheet that you ground into the outlet.
You have to make sure the outlet is grounded because it's grounded to the.
Yep. So you want to read a fascinating book. It's called Earthing, and it's the science of grounding. Human beings carry an electrical charge in us. We are electrical beings. We are energetic beings. That's what we are.
I've seen The Matrix. They turned us into batteries.
Dude, I'm telling you.
They did turn us into batteries.
When you, and this sounds like hippie stuff. Oh, tree hugger,
it
right?
does, but it's not when you look into it.
Well, now they've proven it with science, man.
Yeah.
They can watch an electron exchange between your body and the planet when your barefoot touches a rock, touches water, touches a lawn. And
concrete works too, right?
So concrete works
the concrete
sometimes.
is connected to the earth directly, and it's not like have a bunch of seal on it, and all that. Yes, but you are losing some transfer. The argument is you want to get a natural organic surface like rock.
This bed. So how do you do the bed?
So I forget the name.
I have
of the
one,
company.
bro. I'll show you.
Okay, I got to see that.
So there's a sheet that is connected to the outlet, and the outlet has to be grounded, or else you're wasting your time.
And it's woven with copper.
Yep. And so
it's a very conductive material.
Correct.
To offload the positively or the excess electrons in your body.
Yeah.
And now you're getting 8 hours of.
And I'm telling you, you plug it in and you lay on your bed and it feels different.
We go off on a tangent, but the story's cool. The guy who wrote this book.
I think people are listening.
No, this is good. No, I'm going to.
Clint Ober, read
this book. So he was a lineman.
Yep.
He worked in the electrical field, and the story is he's basically like interactive. Why do we ground electricity into the earth? Like what does that make? How does that make sense? Well, the earth has an electrical current, obviously, right? So he's like, sees all these people with shoes on, and he's like, when did the invention of shoes? Like, if we ground, electricity into the earth, like what kind of interaction should humans have with that? Like, that's how we were.
And this was in the
created.
70s.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is his so he starts creating these models and using them in his own body, and he starts realizing, my inflammation is down, my sleep is improving, like my recovery is improving, my joints feel better. And so then he actually gets some scientists to back him. They do some real studies and find out there is legitimacy to this. And so the whole point is that we were made to interact with nature's natural current, electrical current, as electrical beings ourselves, and that we have put carpet and flooring and tennis shoes and everything else to create a barrier between that, and it causes systemic issues like toxic inflammation and whatever else. So anyways, it's pretty fascinating. They make grounding mats that you could be sitting on your computer, take your shoes off, be typing, so you could be getting. So there's ways to get plenty of hours of grounding in. But I have a sheet, bro. I have a sheet. I have the mats as well. I don't use the mats as much because they're hard, but I sleep on the sheet for 8 hours every night. That's on a grounding sheet. So.
That's awesome, dude.
Awesome.
Like, because when I talk about this, most people are like, what are you talking about? And
I don't think it's hip.
You got your bed too.
Bro, I got it.
Dude.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hippie thing. As a Christian, and like off the hippie stuff, I believe God created us in this perfect environment that we have separated ourselves from.
Yeah. I'm going to call out to some grounding companies. Hey, let's get Chad some sheets.
Yeah.
Some sheets, man.
Let's get Chad some sheets, man.
So Clint Ober, that's who I bought it through.
Yeah.
So I forget.
There's a couple different companies. I forgot his brand is, honestly, but you could find it by Clint Ober. That's where we purchased ours as well.
I figured.
Bro, they make like It's weird. They make all kinds of stuff. They make these, and I'll explain it way wrong, but the concept, concept is they make like, Wi-Fi, they're they will close off a certain area so that no Wi-Fi can penetrate that area. So you can like set your room up to where even if you have Wi-Fi in your house, you can set your room up to when you're sleeping, there's no Wi-Fi in there.
Yeah.
So another book, EMF'd.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard EMF'd. It's a good one as well. It's about electromagnetic frequency.
You're into. I plunge every. Every
cold
day.
plunge. I put one in my gym.
Dry sauna and I plunge every day.
Yep.
Gary. So kind of announcement. I don't know what Gary Breck is coming on the show.
Okay.
So he's kind of who I'm following right now with.
He's huge.
Yeah, and he's 10X guy.
More holistic approach to health and wellness.
But dude, it's like it's funny how when you say that, like I said, people think, oh, you're a hippie or whatever. It's like, we're the two best places you feel in the world, the beach and the woods. You know what I mean? Like you never go to the beach or go to the woods and like feel worse.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
my daughter would cry. And if I took her outside instantly, she would stop crying. I would take her outside and I would stand on the grass in my bare feet. And that current, obviously, her connected to my skin.
Yeah.
And she would stop crying. I mean, there's legitimacy to
have
it.
you geeked out on red light yet? Because that's another
I know
one.
a lot about it, but I don't. Bro, those things are expensive, man. So
you can get. Mine was like $900.
That's expensive, bro.
It's expensive, but it's a one-time purchase
for sure.
And then you're done.
Like,
right?
I tell people this all the time. Like, what's the price tag on your health? You know? So
and dude,
it's just one. That's one because those sheets aren't cheap either. Those sheets are expensive.
And that's something like. I'm kind of a compulsive spender. Like I love shopping, which is crazy. Not in the mall. I can't go to the mall, but like Instagram has figured out my algorithm. And I mean, bro, they literally got me yesterday when I was in the hotel room because they're like, hey, have you seen this yet? And it's a foam roller that has like, it's a bunch of balls attached. So it has like more texture. And I was like, if that could make my spine feel better,
you bought it.
I'm buying it. $33 done, you know? But it's like
it's at home waiting for you when you get home.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I think is like, what's your health worth?
Yeah.
And dude, I'll tell you, have you heard of the chirp wheel?
I don't think so.
The chirp wheel, it's the same concept as a foam roller, but the diameter is like as big as a dinner plate and it's about this wide. So it stretches your back out way more aggressively than like a foam roller would. I bought a chirp wheel and that thing changed my life. And so it's like half of my gym, I have a whole wall of healing modalities and mobility
the body pillar of resilient. That's what we're talking about now. The body pillar, health and wellness, man.
Well, I know we started this conversation on BioPro and you know, if anybody wants BioPro, do you have a code?
Coupon code endless.
Endless. So I don't have a code. So because I don't like to do the codes. But but I know Greg was on. Greg's like I'm like I don't do codes. Greg's like I got a code.
I got a code.
So Greg,
coupon code endless will save you 10% off at checkout.
All right.
So if you want BioPro, you can use Greg Anderson's code, coupon code endless, and get it. And man, I know you're not this way. I'm not this way. I don't promote anything that I don't use or believe in.
Nope. And I'll tell companies too, because I've had a lot of companies like, hey, we're interested in buying this many episodes and kind of doing like a test run. I was like, well, before you buy any, you got to send me product and I want to wait 3 months.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to take something or use something, you can't get feedback. You know, you need a decent window of time, you know? And so, and I did that same thing with BioPro. And I was like, this stuff's real.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, usually at the end of our show, we give our guests some of our sponsors stuff. And I would give you BioPro, but you already have BioPro. So we're gonna give you a pair of Gators. So Gators glasses. This box is empty, actually.
Oh, okay.
We'll let you pick.
I was getting all excited to open that up.
Wait.
That's just the
we have some. Yeah, so you could actually see some Gators, but I know you've seen them before. But Gators is
phenomenal, bro.
Phenomenal. You've worn Gator glasses before.
I'll tell you. I'm gonna tell you a Gator story. Andy Stumpf, when I did his podcast, he gave me a pair of Gators.
Yeah,
and they're my favorite pair of sunglasses I've ever had. And I lost them in Cabo last year.
Oh no!
Well, now you got
look at
that. This pair you can look at and see if you want, but we have a whole box of them over here. You can pick which ones you want.
Okay, yeah.
And And in fact, if they're not a pair you like, then they'll.
Don't let Andy hear that. Yeah, those are sick, dude.
These lenses are awesome. They're like smoke, like pink lenses. They're awesome for shooting. We have those. We have
I really like those. Yeah. These are cooler than the ones Andy gave me.
That's right.
Of course they are.
Because we're cool. Because we're cooler than Andy.
Andy's way subpar on the gift giving.
You ever rolled with Andy?
No, I haven't.
He's good, man.
Really? That's awesome. That's awesome.
He got good so fast that it's frustrating because it's like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years.
Is his wife a black belt or something?
Yeah,
Okay,
Leia. Yeah, dude. I mean, I don't know how long you want to record for, but I got Leia's story. That's pretty funny.
Andy's such a good dude, man. We're just talking. He was kind of encouraging me last week on some stuff.
I love that dude, man. Yeah. He's one of the coolest guys. When I met Leia, she was wearing a breast cancer awareness belt, which I didn't know that was a thing. And so she was teaching a class, and I attended her class. And it's like a light pink, but I was like, okay, I've never heard of a pink belt. So that girl must be a really, really, really old purple belt. Right.
Yeah.
And then I rolled with her. I was like, oh, she's good for a purple belt.
Yeah.
And I was telling Andy that. He's like, she's not a purple belt, dude. She's a black belt world champion. I was like, well, okay, it makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're cool people, man. I really dig that.
So also we have Midas Gold Group. James Clark is founder of Midas Gold Group, Marine Corps veteran. And, I'm big on precious metals, having gold and silver in hand. So you could grab yourself a 1 ounce of silver there, take back with you. And anybody listening, go to MidasGoldGroup.com. And if you mention my name, you'll get some free silver, just like Greg got here. But awesome.
No discount codes though.
No discount.
Just mention you.
Mention me and you get some free silver. Yep. And then we got a Mighty Oaks swag bag with some of our books and t-shirts and stuff like that for you to take with you.
Oh, nice. Thank you, man. I appreciate this. This is cool.
Absolutely. I don't have any gummy bears like Sean Ryan did, but
do you have the good gummy bears?
No, he said, it's funny. He says that he's like, they're legal in all 50 states, so, which they're just regular gummy bears.
Oh, okay.
But everybody keeps asking me, how was the gummy bears? I'm like, they're good. They're gummy bears.
They're just gummy bears.
Yeah. But they're good.
That's
they're good. And then, I also want to thank Smith & Wesson for the show. I mean, I know they know you're coming on. And maybe we could work on switching you over from that, getting you away from that Glock. Getting you over to some American hardware.
All right, we'll have to talk a little more. No, I just want to say thanks for having me. Yeah. This was fun. Something that I'm an advocate for is always jumping at opportunities. And it's like, you invited me on the show. Why not fly down here and just get an episode out? Because anytime you jump on an opportunity, more opportunities open up.
Sure, yeah.
And the world of podcasting has opened up a lot of different things in my life. It's always cool to see. And so for anyone listening, if you want to check out my show, it's Endless Endeavor. It's everywhere. And if you're digging these No One's Coming to Save You shirts.
Yeah.
We're all digging them.
Those are at my Jiu-Jitsu Academy website, Electric North, theelectricnorth.com. So,
right. And then
follow you on IG.
Granderson 33.
Right. Yep.
Do you have that video pinned?
No. If you want to see the video we talked about, you're going to have to scroll down for 10 minutes to May 5th of 2020.
400 million views.
No, on mine, it only got like 1 million. There was a radio show host
that shared it,
and it went viral on his page. Yeah, so
it was nuts. Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was good.
Changed my life. Like your life can change in a moment. It's bizarre.
From speaking truth.
From speaking truth.
Exactly. Man, it was awesome to have you on, bro.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
We're gonna go eat some sushi.
Yeah, I'm in.
And shoot and train.
Let's do it.
All right.
What's up, guys? Sean here, one of your hosts at Resilient. Thank you for watching the show. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any bonus content and future episodes. We have some amazing guests that share their story of resilience, and you won't want to miss it.